still so famous. You know, he's been dead for 20 years, and he was competing in the 70s, and his last show was 1980, so that's 42 years ago, and he's still so famous. It's like people still, every time I do a show about MikeMentzer, it gets a lot of ratings.
It's interesting, you know, he had his physique was truly like, it was a standout physique. And I
Yes.
think, I mean, I'm sure you could attest to this, the fact that his methods were so extreme on one end of the continuum and he had a physique like that. I think that's why people were drawn, at least that's how I was drawn to the, you know, hey, I want to learn a little more about this. Cause obviously it started with Arthur Jones, but no one would have listened to Arthur Jones if it wasn't for Mentzer popularizing his methods, right? Because Arthur Jones was not a competitive bodybuilder, and you know that wouldn't have made it, wouldn't have created such a you know, snowball effect like it did, I think, right?
Yeah, I can attest to that because that's right when I started bodybuilding. In fact, I think the first Muscle Builder magazine I ever bought was where Mentzer was on the cover, and he had just placed third in the Mr. America, and he won it the next year. So it was the first magazine article they ever did about him, the first interview they ever did. And I remember at the time when I started training, everybody was training 6 days a week, and we were all following Arnold's, you know, protocol. And Arnold would do 6 days a week of training each body part 2 or 3 times a week. And he would do at least 20 sets of body parts. So think about that. If you're doing biceps, he's doing like 4 exercises, 5 sets each. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of sets.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody was doing the same thing. Everybody around the country was doing the same thing. And then Mentzer came out with this interview and he said he does 5 sets. And they go, per exercise? He goes, no, per body part. And they go, what? And he said, yeah, I only train 3 days a week for like 50 minutes of workout or something. And the guy couldn't believe it. He thought he was joking. Well, the next year, Mentzer comes in and wins the America, totally improved. He looked like he put on like 10 more pounds of muscle. And then after that, you had a contest winning bodybuilder who had a great physique. He was winning Mr. America, Mr. Universe, and he had one of the best physiques in the world. And he was following this way of training. And what he was saying made sense. He's like, you can either train hard or you can train long, but you can't do both. And people were like, oh, that makes sense. And then he was saying the reason why Arnold looks the way he does is because, number one, he's got incredible genetics. And number two, he's taking drugs. And see, you had, at the time, steroids weren't even that talked about in the magazines. So everybody was just training thinking, oh, this is how you get big. You train 6 days a week, 20 sets of body part. And it wasn't working for anybody. Nobody around the country was getting big. So when Mentzer started saying this, everybody started questioning what they were doing. And they started cutting back on the volume. They started taking more rest days. And that really worked. And that made a difference with everybody's training. So MikeMentzer really revolutionized the sport of bodybuilding by introducing this. And even more than his physique, the impact he made just on the training philosophy. I don't think too many people did like 5 sets of body part like he did, but I think everybody questioned what they were doing, and they definitely cut back on the volume. I know I did. I started taking more rest days. I stopped doing as many sets because it made sense. I mean, you could put much more into your workout if you're doing 12 sets of body part instead of like 25 sets of body part, because otherwise you have to, you know, you have to space it out. You have to, what's the word? You have to like try to make, you know, it's like a marathon, you know, you have to, and this way you could just, you could just go all out and train hard for 12 sets and then you're done. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because you got to wonder if, I mean, obviously Arthur Jones was a genius in his time, right?
Yeah.
And his contribution was huge in terms of the machines that he was creating with Nautilus and then MedX, right? But I don't think if it wasn't for him being attracted to the bodybuilding world of, you know, having Mike and Ray and, you know, come to his facility in DeLand, I think it was, right? And then, you know, Sergio Oliva even had, you know, even Arnold went there, right? From obviously this is all, I'm getting this from your podcast, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
and then Casey too, Casey Viator, he was the big one.
Yeah, he was the number one, right? So would it have been as popular in the, like, would that have, you know, you got to wonder what bodybuilding would be like in terms of the contribution that they brought to, you know, having people cut back and focusing more on recovery. Because I'm sure, imagine a natural bodybuilder doing what Arnold was doing. Like you would learn the hard way. And I'm sure people already did learn the hard way, but like to another extreme where just breaking down all the time. It's like people would quit, right? They just quit bodybuilding.
And that's what was happening back then. I mean, if you look back at the 70s, not just guys who competed, but guys who wanted to be big and wanted to, improve their physiques, and there might have been training at home or whatever. Everybody was doing it wrong because we were all, but everybody was doing that back then. Everybody was training 6 days a week because Arnold was doing it, and then everybody else around the country was doing it, and all the other bodybuilders were doing it. They all did the same thing. So it was like monkey see, monkey do. And it wasn't until, like I said, Mentzer came along that things started to change.
Do you think that obviously the methods got way more extreme? I don't think that was really working for too many bodybuilders, right? Where it's like once every 2 weeks or something like that. That's some of the recommendations at near the end there for bodybuilding, right?
As far as like the training?
Yeah, like how he put in his more recent writings, I guess, or his more recent methods where like you train once every, I think it was it's like once every 7 days was an actual workout. It was like a full body workout once every 7 days. But I think there's some misunderstanding there, or misinterpretation of it. Was that directed towards bodybuilding or more just general fitness? Like those might be two different things, right? Some of those recommendations near the end. I don't know. Do you know anything of that? Because I know you interviewed John Little a few times, right?
Yeah, I don't think John talked about that, but I think what Mike was doing toward the end of his life was he was trying to make some money because he had some problems with substance abuse and stuff, and he really went through a bad period, and then he kind of came out of it, and he kind of found himself again, and then he started doing personal training. He was doing personal training at Gold's, and I think he was doing that maybe as a way to make more money, because then he could only train somebody once every 7 days, and that way he could fit more people in,
Gotcha.
So he'd be like, let's do a hard workout and then don't work out again for another 10 days,
Right. Yeah.
Fit more clients in the, but I don't think you need that much rest.
And I don't think a lot of bodybuilders would be responding well to. I mean, you look at someone like Dorian Yates. He's a prime example. He trains 4 days a week, kind of applying some of those principles, right? So definitely, that was one far end of the extreme at near the end of his career, Mentzer specifically. But